Thank you for joining us today for our next edition of our 49er Industry Chat. I am going to pause as we welcome our participants into the chat today. Thank you for joining us. My name is Noemi Guevara. I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement at California State University, Long Beach. We thank you for attending today's Industry Chat. Before we start, I want to let you know this session is being recorded and it will live on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. I would also like to encourage you to submit, if you'd like to submit any Q&A, to use the button located above or below your screen to submit any questions throughout the chat today. And now it's my honor to introduce our Industry Chat host for today, Kimberly Ritter-Martinez. Kimberly Ritter-Martinez joined the City of Long Beach Harbor Department in 2017 as a Senior Planner and Economist in the department's Master Planning Division. In her role, Ms. Ritter-Martinez provides expertise in the local, national, and international economies to support long-range planning, business development, communications, and legislative affairs. Ms. Ritter-Martinez oversaw the production of the port's 2018 Economic Impact Study and maintains the custom model used to estimate the impacts of port's operations, port infrastructure projects, and port-related tourism. Kimberly earned her bachelor's and master's degree in economics from CSULB and is an active in a number of professional and community organizations. Please join me in welcoming Kimberly Ritter-Martinez to today's industry chat. Thank you so much, Kimberly, for joining us today.
Oh, thank you, Noemi. It's great to be here.
Wonderful. So I'm very excited to get to know you and your presentations titled Transformational Change, Supply Chains, the Economy, and New Beginnings. But before we talk about your presentation, I would like to start at the beginning to get to know you a little bit better. You know, your journey through Cal State Long Beach, earning your undergrad and master's degree. If you could share with us, what was that experience like? And why you chose CSULB of all the schools?
Well, my experience probably isn't typical of most younger students. I did start at CSULB right after graduating high school, which was way back in 1983. And I actually dropped out after less than 2 years. I just was unsure of what I wanted to do. I was frustrated with school, and so I went out and I started working. And when I was in my mid-30s, I was starting to think I needed to go back to school because I felt like I was stuck. And when I first left university, the emphasis on having a college degree wasn't there like it is today. And by the time I got into my mid-30s and felt like I wanted to do something different, I realized I really needed to go back to school and finish my education. And so right about that time, my younger sister was getting married, and my mother came up to me and she said, you know, I know you're thinking about going back, and since it doesn't look like you're getting married anytime soon, how about your dad and I give you the money we had saved for a wedding and you can go back to school. And so, you know, I was living in Long Beach and I was already familiar with Cal State Long Beach. And it was also, for me, it was affordable. So as a working adult, I had planned to go back to school part-time at night. And when I first started, just get my BA. And the adult reentry program at the school was really super helpful. And one of the things I learned between my first go around and the second go around is to learn how to ask for help. It really was essential. So when I went back in, I decided to major in biology, which is what I was doing the first time around. And I had a professor suggest that I take a concentration in environmental or ecology with a minor in either journalism or economics. And I thought, well, I had a couple of economics courses under my belt from some attending community college a few years ago. So I decided to do that. And then as I started getting more into school, I realized that with the biology degree, I was going to be collecting my first Social Security check along with my diploma. So I went ahead and just launched straight into economics, and I loved it. It was was still science oriented, which is where I was, as opposed to a straight out business degree. I love the
It's
small.
more like applied science, you know?
Yeah, exactly. It was social science, but still, you're using a lot of math and theory and the things that I like. Plus, it was so interdisciplinary. You know, there was political science and anthropology and psychology and history, and all of these subjects that I loved just made it really interesting to me. And by the time I was getting ready to graduate with my BA, I still don't know anything. And so that's what encouraged me to go on and get my master's degree as well. And so throughout that whole period, it took me about 7 years, I think. I worked full time during the day and went to school at night and juggled. You know, I was a distance runner, so I was always training for a race or something as well. But the second time around, I loved going to school. I got on well with my professors. I think the dynamic changes a little bit when you're older than most of your professors, coming back to school at my age as I did. But it was just a great experience, and I enjoyed every minute of it.
Wonderful. And you talked about two different things, like making sure you ask for help. You know I've met many students that I will talk to them, like, do you talk to your professors, or they have a problem? And I'll be like, did you go ask this person? And they'll stare at you, be like, no. And that importance of asking for help, if you need it, because there's someone available as a resource for you. Freeze? Did I freeze?
I'm sorry,
There, you were frozen there.
There you are. So
there you
okay.
are.
Okay. Okay. So it froze when you were talking about advising students where to go get help. And I had never made use of office hours. When I went back, I have a feeling a lot of my professors were like, oh my God, here she comes again.
Right.
I was there all the time. And I think they're asking for help is one of the things you just have to kind of get over, and it's necessary. And you'll find that all throughout your career that you're going to need to do that sometimes, and then make yourself available to help other people as well.
Right. So you finished your undergrad, and you said you were working full time. What kind of position did you have, and were you kind of using what you were learning in that undergrad before you jumped into your master's degree?
I was not. When I first started going back to school, I was working for a company where we imported and exported lumber and furniture. And so it was a small business. So I knew about running a small business, but it wasn't economics. And that company shut down. And then it seemed unfortunate at the time, but it turned out to be a really lucky thing. I went to work at a small father and son company, and I was an administrative person, right, the office secretary, but they did not care if I got all my work done by 10 in the morning and spent the rest of the day studying. So it was, it was really, really a lucky thing that I was able to fall into that position, because it made what I was doing a lot easier. Right after I graduated, I gave myself the summer before I started looking for a job in the field. And I went with a friend. We went to the Galapagos for a few weeks. And then I came home and started submitting applications. The position, the LAEDC, came up. I applied. They called me in for an interview. And it happened very, very quickly. I think they just really needed to get a body in a chair up there. So I started and launched right into using what I had learned in school. So I was doing forecasting and writing, and very quickly they got me into talking on the radio to media. So the employment numbers would come out, and so a television station would call, or they'd send a camera crew out, and you'd go out and talk to them and be on TV, which was really difficult for me at first because I'm a fairly introverted person. And I remember the first time I had to go out and give a presentation, I had to hang onto the podium because my hands were shaking. I couldn't let anybody see that. But it was a huge learning experience. And especially, I started working at LADC in 2009, and I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but right smack dab in the middle of the Great Recession. So
Right. That's when I graduated.
was it? Okay.
That's when I graduated.
Okay. Incredible time to be an economist. Not so much if you're having to go out there and look for a job, but timing counts so much in life. So it was a really, really interesting time to be getting into the field. And like I said, the skills I learned at the LAEDC, how to write, how to communicate effectively, get out there and do public speaking, working with the media. Those are all things that were terrifying at first, but really, really helped me in my career as we went on.
For those that don't know what the LAEDC is, Los Angeles Economic Development Corporation, right?
Right. I'm sorry. I should have explained that. It's a nonprofit organization that works on attracting and retaining jobs and companies in LA County. So I did a lot of labor economics and industry economics, real estate, things like that. It was very, very diverse in the sorts of things that I was working on.
Wonderful. And I do have like a question. I have a couple questions that have come in, but as an economist, what do you think are the skills needed today to be successful? I know you talked about being an introvert. So for our students that are going to graduate, or those that are graduated within the last couple of years, what things do you think that they should work on right now as they get ready to, enter that job field?
Right. So in school, you're learning all the basics of how the economy works. You have your macro, your micro, whatever sorts of specialty things. You're learning all of those skills. What I didn't have when I graduated was knowing where to go and find data. So when you're in school, they usually give you a data set and you work on it. So getting out into the real world and having to learn, go to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, all the different kinds of data that's available at the Federal Reserve and through the census. So getting familiar with actually finding, downloading, manipulating data, that would be very helpful. And the census is great. If you go on the Census Bureau, they have the Census Academy, and they do all kinds of little training videos, and they do webinars that teach you how to go in and find and use what they provide. Of course, your employer is going to teach you those things too. But if you can get a head start, especially, get an internship. One of the things that I missed was, as being an older working adult while I was going to school, is being able to take advantage of internship opportunities. And as I noted, being able to write clearly and, give a presentation, be okay, be comfortable with speaking in public. I remember the first article I had to write at the LADC for our newsletter. I was trying to be very sophisticated in my language and use my econo speak. And, I used the word leverage in an article I was writing, and which isn't that technical, but my boss, she just redlined it out and taught me the value of communicating in very simple, clear, direct language. You don't write to show off, you write to communicate. And that's something when I've had to train interns, get them past. It's okay if it's a short, snappy sentence. It doesn't have to be long and convoluted to show how smart you are. So clear, effective communication is super important. And then, developing relationships. That's what internships are also helpful for. Not only practical on-the-job experience, but getting to know people, learning how to interact with colleagues at different levels within the organization. I have to say that although I always put my resume out on the job search engines, on LinkedIn and things like that, I have always gotten my jobs through relationships, through asking to be introduced to people, through other people, knowing other people. And it's so hard to get, I think, through the search engines of some of these places. And monster.com must work because it's up there and people use it. But I'm saying for me personally, making those connections was the thing that worked. And that's actually how I ended up getting the job at the port. So about 2016, things had changed at the LAEDC. There was some restructuring and the nature of my job changed. The chief economist who I had worked under, he had left the organization. And it just felt to me like it was time to move on. Plus, I lived in Long Beach. I was commuting to downtown LA by Blue Line. And so there's 3 hours of a day that are gone. So I
Right.
started looking for something close to home. And I really, I went from, they were a nonprofit, and I wanted to stay in some sort of public service job. And so the port, I've always been interested in international trade, in shipping, and just the, even I had a romantic notion of the sea and exploring and sailing. I had even raced sailboats for a couple of years before I went back to school, and just had to start cutting out some activities so I could study, right? So I was attending a port event. They do a lot of public events, and I was there, and I had met my old colleague from the LA EDC. And I had told him, I'd really like to work for the Port of Long Beach. And he says, well, let me introduce you to so-and-so. And so he did, and we exchanged cards. And that afternoon, I emailed the gentleman, and he said, yeah, it was great to meet you, but here's who you really need to speak to. Put me in touch with that person, and we communicated a little bit. And, time went by, and eventually a position came open, and he asked me to come interview. I did. I never heard back. I thought, oh, God, I just must have really blown it. And then months later, I flew to Las Vegas because my husband was playing in a golf tournament there. The plane lands, I switched the phone back on, and it's the port saying, hey, we want to talk. And from there, you just go through the whole process of onboarding. And by August 2017, I was working at the port.
Oh, the power of networking is so important, and it's something that you don't learn in the classroom. You have to actually do it and put yourself out there, because you never know who might be able to offer you that next opportunity.
Yes, it can be a little scary. Like I said, I'm an introvert. I'd have a hard time just going up and introducing myself to people. But if you're like that, it's just something you're going to have to push through and make it happen.
Yeah. So next, I would like to talk about your transition to working for one of the largest ports in the country. But I know you have a little video for us that I think is the perfect time for us to play.
Yeah, let's roll it.
Oh, it gives me the chills. It's so exciting to see it and to think, that 170 billion annually, 2.6 million jobs across the nation. That just must feel amazing to work there every day.
It is. And I have to say, or start by just saying how impressive the people I work with are. I work in a relatively small division. We have 2 PhDs. These are incredibly smart, dedicated people. And that's one of my favorite things about working at the port is the people I work with, because I have learned so much from them. And, everyone from interns on up to our executive director, they're approachable. It's just a very pleasant place to work, I could say.
Wonderful. So I do. So what is your typical day like, as the economist for the Port of Long Beach?
Well, it changes because I tend to work on very, very large projects. So like our long range cargo forecast, that was completed right before I came. So, I keep an eye on what's happening with our cargo throughput. Is it still meeting the expectations of the forecasts? I go ahead and develop short-term forecasts so we can track what we're doing on an annual basis. Those economic impact numbers you cited about the 2.6 million jobs. So that was the first big project I worked on with a consultant, is developing our economic impact report in terms of, looking at the number of jobs we support, labor income, output, things like that. I have worked on a economic study looking at some of our environmental programs, seeing what the sort of the trade-offs are between our environmental goals versus needing to maintain, high levels of containers and cargoes coming through the port. I spend a lot of time just reading, compiling data, taking care of my data sheets, attend a lot of webinars, talk to colleagues outside of the port, because right now I'm the only economist in the port. So I need to stay connected to the profession to help maintain my skills. So I do a lot of studying as well.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question. How do you stay abreast of all the latest trends? But also, I know you work with local, national, and international economies. So how do you stay abreast of all that as well?
A lot of newsletters. I mean, professional organizations. So I belong to the National Association of Business Economics, and I joined that organization as soon as I came on board the LAEDC. And within a year or two, I joined the board as treasurer, and I've been in that position ever since. So that gives me a way to connect with other economists in the area, and economists that have different specialties. So we'll have speakers come in and talk about the housing market, international trade, different industries. So that's one way to do it, is to maintain those connections. And that's another thing I would advise people, is get involved in industry organizations, and just don't sign up and pay your dues. Get on the board, be active, join a committee. I know a lot of times, especially when I'm trying to recruit for board positions in other volunteer organizations I belong to, people will say, well, I'm too new, I don't know enough. And it's like, so often we just need people to step up and volunteer. We'll show you. We'll show you how to do the job. But that's the best thing you can do, is just be active in those organizations. And one of the other cool things about the port is they want us to train. We're required to do 40 hours of additional training a year. So they're very, very good about letting us go to conferences. We have a program that will help pay if you want to go back and get an advanced degree. They provide training opportunities within the port. Like, I'm attending some advanced Excel workshops, things like that, training on leadership, all those different kinds of things. So lots of opportunities there for training. And then, like I said, the professional organizations and going out and getting additional certifications, things like that.
Yeah. Building that community and that network again, it becomes clear. I do have quite a few questions right now that came in. How have all the supply chain issues affected your short and long-term planning?
They've made it very difficult. So one of the, it's been a very interesting couple of years, because it's obviously thrown all my forecasts into disarray. But the port, because we're a landlord port, which means that we hold the land in trust for the people of California, and we lease to the marine terminal operators. And it's up to us to provide the infrastructure that will allow cargo to move in and out of the port efficiently. So as you saw from the video, there was a lot of construction projects that we were highlighting. And we have a $1.7 billion capital plan that's out over the next 10 years. We're increasing our on-dock rail capacity, increasing our ability to get cargo out of the port faster. And what's happened with the supply chain issues is our land use models tell us we have sufficient capacity to handle this amount of cargo. In fact, we're not even at capacity, and yet stuff is piling up at the docks, although that's starting to alleviate itself. So there's been issues throughout the supply chain. So you have not enough warehouses to hold all the cargo that's coming in, not enough truckers to deliver it, not enough chassis to put the containers on for the trucks to take it out. Part of that problem is just because of the dynamics of COVID and everybody staying at home and ordering a bunch of stuff. That'll eventually revert. But we do know that the supply chain bottlenecks are there. So some of the things we're doing are working in close partnership with all the stakeholders in the supply chain to do things that will free up the supply of chassis. You know, there's efforts to get more truck drivers to enter the profession. And of course, when you have entity as complex as the port and its supply chain, information is really important. And what we haven't had in the past is a really good visibility into the supply chains from an information standpoint. So one of the things Port of Long Beach is doing is we started a supply chain information highway. So it's a new platform that allows all the stakeholders of the supply chain to come in and get greater visibility on their data and more accurate information as to where the cargo is and how it's going to be delivered. Just getting that set up. I don't think we've gone live with it yet, but that's going to be super important to helping deal with the supply chain issues.
Cool. What has been the greatest challenge that you've worked through in your 5 years at the port?
So when I first came there, it's like, okay, you're the economist, and I was in a division of planners. Everybody's a planner, and except me. And so I really had to learn what long-range planning in a local government department looks like, and what specifically that looks like at the port. And then how would I do supports that? So cargo forecasting, we do that once every 5 years for the long range forecasting, right? That goes out to 2040, 2050. Economic impact, you only do that every few years because it doesn't change all that much. Okay, so what do I do with the rest of my day? So the challenging thing was finding a way to fit in. So I developed a lot of my role, and I did that by talking to other divisions and volunteering. Hey, I'll step in. Let me try to do that. And it's taken the 5 years that I've been at the port to really do that. And I'm still looking at ways to work across different divisions and see, well, oh, maybe I can help our communications team with a monthly press release, giving them some information on what's going on in the economy to put the context down for what's happening for cargo at the port. And maybe I can help our government relations people by showing what cargo is going into what legislative districts. So grant support, things like that. So just finding my place there was a bit of a challenge. It was always fun, but I would have to say that. And then just because I have never worked for an organization with 500 people is finding out where do I go to get what information. And again, you know, right away I joined, we have a women's leadership circle. And so I got onto the board my first year there and worked my way up. I finished out last year as president of the women's leadership circle. And I'm now in that great position of being a past president, which is always nice. So
Less work.
yeah.
But yeah, finding those partnerships, you know, within your organization is key because you don't know who you would need to lean on in the future. And for you, it just seems like you built that partnership with everyone to be able to share what you're doing in your role every day.
Yeah, and just getting the data I need. It's such a huge organization, and okay, who do I go to for container counts? Who do I go to for a number of ships coming in? You know, just things like that. You have to. It takes a while to find your way around.
Definitely. Another question, but with the international tensions abroad, how do you make adjustments in your planning, Economically, how does this affect your forecasting?
In the short term, yes, there are impacts. I have to keep an eye, obviously, on what's going on in the world, but think about how that impacts the US economy. So inflation, obviously, that's a big topic right now. Okay, what does that mean? Are people going to stop buying things? Well, so far they're still spending money on things, even though it's gotten more expensive. But how long is that going to last? I have to look at COVID outbreak in China, port closes. Well, that's going to help ease things coming in the short term, but then we'll have another rush of containers coming in once that port opens back up. And then what's going on in the Ukraine with Russia invading, that's scary, and that affects consumer sentiment here in the United States. So it makes people uneasy, and not having a clear idea of what the future looks like is bad for the economy, right? Businesses stop investing, people stop spending. So those are the kinds of things I have to look at. Long term, right? When you're thinking, as we do as planners, 10, 20, 30 years in the future, those ups and downs are going to come in the economy. But you have to think out past those and keep a clear eye on what you envision for yourself in the future. What do we want the port to look like in 2040, 2050? What's happening today does obviously have an immediate impact, but we can't necessarily let that deter us from what our vision is for the future. Obviously, you make adjustments as you go along. So it's a bit of juggling, short term versus the long term vision, but that's just part of the job. And probably any economist has to deal with that sort of thing.
Definitely. And talking about the future, the port is making efforts toward providing reliable zero emissions electricity. How do you plan and consult to find balance between planning for needed upgrades and then reporting on the cost of such projects?
All right, so our environmental planning division, that's their focus, right? So the whole program with getting zero emissions trucks into the port is what they're working on. And I participated in a study a few years ago when we actually looked at, okay, how do we get truckers to buy these very expensive zero emission trucks? And so we have to assist with that. So we came up with this idea of creating a fund based on containers moving in and out of the port. They would pay a fee or a rate on that container to help raise money to help truckers switch over. So part of that study was to look at, well, that's adding a cost to use in Port of Long Beach. So the economist on the call will know what we're talking about is elasticity. So it's like, how far can you bring up the cost for your one priority, which is getting zero emissions trucks into your drayage fleet, versus you want to keep a high flow of containers and cargo coming in, because that's your revenue. That's the reason why we exist, is to bring that cargo in. So doing an elasticity study to say, okay, how much cargo diversion are we willing to accept in order to get money to finance or help truckers finance their bringing in these zero emissions trucks? So those are the kinds of things we have to look at. Long term, there's a tension there, right? Because we are a government entity, so we're supposed to do what's best for the community, listen to what the community wants, which is obviously less pollution. But we're also an enterprise department, which means we don't take tax money from the city. We don't get money from the city. We generate revenues, and in fact, we kick a lot of money into the city's general fund. So that tension is there. We want to be the very best from a commercial standpoint in terms of moving cargo in and out efficiently, doing the best job we can for our customers. And at the same time, we have to balance that against the fact that we live in a community all around us. Those people have concerns about pollution and noise and congestion, and we have to work very hard to answer to their needs as well. In fact, all of our infrastructure projects right now have environmental justice and pollution mitigation built into them. So like our Pure B on dock rail. That program is to increase the amount of containers that move off the ship onto a train and then straight out of the port. So they're not going on trucks that head up the 710 and create congestion and pollution. So that's another way we're looking at not only making us a better port in terms of capacity and throughput efficiency, but reducing pollution and being a better neighbor as well.
Wonderful. There's so much focus on the environment, like you said, protection, and for port protecting against contaminated water. As a planner and economist, is this a priority as you plan for the future?
It is for the port. It's not something I get involved in directly. Again, that would be our environmental folks, but we have made so much progress on cleaning up harbor waters. We have, thinking about the most recent study we've done, I think like 60% more plants and animals are now found in port waters than we had just 60 years ago. I'm sorry, just 10 years ago. So in the past 10 years, we've seen a 60% increase in the amount of life that's in our waters. Not that we're going to rest there. We always want to do better, but we've made huge strides in reducing the amount of water pollution, as well as the amount of greenhouse gases and pollutants that go into the air from both trucks and port handling equipment or cargo handling equipment.
Talking about, being in Long Beach itself, the port being one of our largest employers, and I saw the numbers, 1 in 5 in Long Beach. That's pretty impactful that people, that live here work in the port as well, and what that means for the economic development for our city.
Well, let me just clarify. So it's not 20% of Long Beach works for the port. So that was an economic impact study. And what that's saying is that the people who work for the port, they go out in the community and spend money. So when I, as a port worker, go to the grocery store or I go to Starbucks, I support those jobs as well. And when the port buys office supplies or engages with an outside contractor, we support those jobs. So through economic modeling, we can measure those ripple effects. So what our activity does, how that ripples out through the community and how we support jobs and create more income for the people that live, not just in Long Beach, but in Southern California and out across the country.
Wonderful, great impact in our community. And then I did see on your website the talking about transformation and change, that partnership with Jordan High School and the ACE Academy, where they're inviting high school students to learn about manufacturing and construction and engineering. So it's just a great tie-in and great partnership with the city,
Well, we actually have programs at 2 Long Beach high schools. So at Cabrillo, we have the Academy of Global Logistics, which is for students who are interested in getting into international trade or working at the port or getting some kind of job in the supply chain. And then, as you mentioned, Jordan High School, that's their newest one, which centers on advanced manufacturing, construction, and engineering. And so we have those. And then also, we do a lot in the community. I don't know how much you go out in Long Beach and go to events and things, but you can hardly go to anything and there's not a Port of Long Beach sponsorship. We have community grants. So if you're in an area or a neighborhood that's impacted by a port activity, you can submit a project to reduce that impact and we can help fund that. We have high school and college scholarships available. We do harbor tours. I think that'll be starting up again now that kind of getting COVID behind us. We can go out and do those fun things again. But if you have a chance, I would encourage you to go out and do a harbor tour. It's really interesting. But yeah, so we're hugely involved in the community in terms of bringing up the next generation of young people who want to work in the industry, as well as helping our communities just live a really good life in Long Beach.
Definitely. Do have a couple more questions. When you work on impact reports, create long-term plans, etc., Who do you share those with? What is the process in deciding whether infrastructure and organizational changes need to take place?
All right, all those decisions take place way above my pay grade. I'm involved in supporting, providing the data that backs those things up. But our whole leadership is focused on these long-term impacts, and the question always comes back to, what do we want to look like in by 2040, 2050? And I'm sorry, say the question one more time.
Work on impact reports, create long-term plans. Who do you share those with? And what is the process in deciding whether infrastructure and organizational changes need to take place?
Okay, so I answered the second part of the question. Right. The first part of the question is, because we are a local government entity, everything is public. So both of those studies are available on our website, and I can share them with whoever's interested. There's a ton of stuff on our website that goes out there. So like all kinds of environmental documents, the environmental impact reports, the truck rate study that I referenced earlier is out there. The forecast, of course, the economic impact report, we want people to know about that. We want to get that out in the community. And in fact, the last one we did before the one I worked on, those job numbers were plastered on the sides of Long Beach Transit buses going all through the city. So yeah, we put a lot of information out there.
Yeah, and we just shared the PowerPoint that you provided for us on some numbers for the Port of Long Beach in the chat. If anyone is interested in doing that. Being right next to LA County, do you partner with other ports for overlapping projects?
Definitely. We have close working relationship with Port of Los Angeles. We're competitors, right? We go head to head when it comes to our various business groups trying to attract cargo to our ports. But we have to work on things together because we are right next door. So our environmental initiatives, our Clean Air Action Plan that was developed in conjunction with the Port of Los Angeles, the efforts to change over the truck drayage fleet to clean vehicles, also a joint effort. A lot of our communications, not communications so much, but the environmental stuff definitely, and some infrastructure things. So, because a little bit of Port of Long Beach is actually in the city of LA. So
that's what I was wondering, because I've driven by there, like, what's the division between Long Beach and LA? Is it like a little canal?
No, it's actually, it's hard to show without a map, but there's this long point that comes out and it curves around this way, and that's Long Beach, and this way it's LA. It can literally stand with a leg in each side of the port. Supply chain issues, we've collaborated on that. You may have heard, or some of our attendees today may have heard, the President Biden appointed a special envoy to deal with port and supply chain issues, who's been out here and met with our leadership many times. So that kind of thing also requires a lot of coordination. So a lot of places for both parts to work together. The container forecast that I managed, that was a joint effort. And I stay in touch with the economist team over at Port of LA as well. So that's friendly wonderful rivalry, but yeah, we do have to work together on a lot of things.
Yes, you have. I call them frenemies, but do you have advice for reentry students? You've been so successful. What helped you focus on your goals on your journey?
I think having come back having been out in the workforce a while and realizing the value of that education was a big motivator. And the fact that, my parents did give me a limited amount of money, but after that, I was writing the checks every semester. So when you're doing that, there's some incentive there. But I also was more settled in myself. I was more confident in what I was doing. I had a clearer idea of what I wanted to accomplish, and that helped a lot. And plus, once I landed in the econ department and was doing that as my major, It was fun.
And
I enjoyed what I was doing. I found it interesting. I liked the people that I met, and it was great because it was a full range of ages. So I wasn't just stuck with people my age, like my group of friends is. So I was dealing with young people, older people. It was good, but it did take a lot of focus. So, there were days where I'm up at 4 or 5 in the morning to go for a run. I go work all day. I would commute back from Manhattan Beach, go to school, get out of class at 9 o'clock, study till midnight, get up and do it all over again. But when you have that clear goal mind in drive, it helped that. It really was so much different the second time around. And like I said, I made use of my professor's office hours. And you also have to remember to take care of yourself mentally and emotionally. And I think the past 2 years of COVID have really brought that home. We talk a lot about it in my workplace. I'm sure there's a lot of that on campus as well. So, you can be driven and work those hours, but you still have to remember to take care of yourself. Otherwise, it can just fall apart.
yeah, find that work-life balance, definitely.
Mhm.
So I know we're up against time, but what is next for Kimberly? Like, what's your next step? Where do you hope to go from here?
Well, we are going back to the office next month, so that would be the most immediate thing. Although I think that our management has recognized the value of, or what people get out of working from home. So we're going back on a hybrid schedule. Just keep doing what I'm doing, keep learning. My division master planning recently merged with transportation planning. So now I'm with a bunch of transportation planners and I'm learning that end of things as well. We do a lot of work on grants. So we get grant funding for those huge infrastructure projects. Federal government through the Infrastructure Act has made a lot of money available. So I'm going to be doing some of that kind of work. And I hope to keep moving up. If there's a management position that becomes available, I'll certainly apply for that. But at the same time, my whole world isn't work. I'm involved in the League of Women Voters, which now has a presence on campus, which has been a lot of fun interacting with the students there, learning about voting and civic participation. My husband and I, we have our German Shepherd and we love to travel. So all of those things, there's the career, there's the volunteer work, there's family life, all those things. And I'm just having a really good time right now.
Wonderful. Yeah. So before we go, any words of wisdom for viewers or those students and alumni that will watch the recording later on?
Just to reiterate, communication, get those skills down, get involved. Even if there's not a work opportunity for you to get involved, go out in the community and join a volunteer organization. I mean, the first time I ever spoke in public wasn't work, it was League of Women Voters. So those kinds of things help. And like I said, get involved on the board, look for leadership opportunities. I have never actually, of course, it doesn't help when you start a career at 45. You're kind of behind in tracking up the management scale, but I've had leadership positions in organizations outside of work. So there's still ways to develop those skills even as you're coming in at entry level and trying to work your way up the corporate ladder or whatever your organization looks like. And just be active in the community, be active at work, look for ways to do things outside of your department. Another thing I'm involved in, so, equity, diversity, inclusion, huge thing that a lot of companies are doing. Well, one of the things the port's looking at doing is diversifying our supplier base. So our executive director, Mario Cordero, organized a team to look at ways to do that. And I joined that team. So even though procurement isn't anything I know anything about, sure, I'll do it.
Yeah, the long life learning, continue to learn and just hone up on your skills,
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to front load your education anymore, right? You can't just go to school, get your degree and think that's it.
Yeah.
You just have to keep doing it and be bold, be brave. I can't tell you how many times I've just been, oh, I don't want to do it. I'm scared. That just doesn't sound like sounds too much. I'm not qualified. Just jump in, do it, give it a try. Be bold.
I mean, there's nowhere to go but up from there,
Right.
Well, Kimberly, we're very happy to have you as part of our alumni family and part of our community. We're very proud of you, and we're very excited to see you grow in Long Beach Port. Before we go, if any of our students or alumni would like to connect with you, are you okay if they reach out to you on LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, we can pop my work email into the chat if you want.
Okay. We could do that.
Here we go.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for joining us today. The video will be on our website at csulb.edu/alumni. Remember to follow us on social media to learn about future chats like this one. We thank you for attending today.